Have you ever loved someone so deeply that silence felt like a scream? Have you ever stared at your phone, waiting for a message that never came, only to realize that your heart was whispering the one thing your mind was too afraid to admit? He's not afraid to lose you. And if he isn't afraid to lose you, why are you afraid to walk away? I used to be that woman. I used to bend, shrink, chase, explain, apologize for being too emotional, too needy, too much. I used to stay up until 2 a.m. rehearsing the perfect message to fix things. I used to believe that if I just said the right thing, showed enough love, gave more, gave endlessly, eventually, he'd see my worth. He didn't. And that was the moment I realized something life-changing. The silence he was giving me was never empty. It was full of information. So I gave it back to him, but not out of revenge, out of self-respect. Because silence, when rooted in power, is not passive. It's loud, it echoes, and when done right, it forces a man to confront the one thing he thought he could avoid, the reality of losing a woman who finally chose herself. This is not a video about playing games. This is about reclaiming your power, rewiring your beliefs about love, and walking through the fire of heartbreak into the most magnetic version of yourself. Because the truth is, when you go silent, you don't disappear, you amplify. And if he was ever going to wake up, it won't be because of another paragraph you send. It'll be because you stopped trying to prove your value and started embodying it. Let's talk about what that journey really looks like. Because if you stay with me through this, you won't just learn how to make him feel the pain of losing you. You'll understand why that pain is the only thing that can make him truly see you. And more importantly, why you won't need his validation anymore when he does. It started with a slow fade. He didn't ghost me, not all at once. No, he was smarter than that. He breadcrumbed. A few hours of silence turned into a day. The good morning texts stopped. The phone calls shortened. His responses got colder, drier, emptier, and I made excuses. He's probably just busy. He's not great at texting. He's under a lot of pressure right now. But deep down, I knew, we all do, that moment you feel the energetic shift when his heart starts retreating, when your intuition tightens, when the emotional oxygen gets thinner, But the tragedy of too many women is this: instead of pulling back, we double down. We reach out more. We try harder. We ask the dreaded, "Is everything okay?" question with trembling hope. And when we don't get the response we crave, we start to negotiate with ourselves. We call it love, but it's survival, emotional survival. And survival is never magnetic. It's desperate. So the more I tried to hold on, the faster he slipped through my fingers. Until one day, I opened our chat thread and realized something chilling. The last 6 messages were all from me. 6. In a row, and not a single one had been answered. That's when something in me snapped. Not in rage, not in sadness, in clarity. He wasn't confused. He wasn't overwhelmed. He wasn't lost. He just wasn't choosing me. And from that moment on, I chose me. The first 72 hours of silence were hell. I won't glamorize it. It felt like detox, like ripping emotional IVs out of my heart. The silence was deafening. Every part of me wanted to reach out, to just say one last thing, to get closure, to remind him of how much we meant to each other, to ask why. But every time I reached for my phone, I asked myself a brutal question: do I want a response? Or do I want respect? Because the two aren't the same. A response is easy. It's immediate. It soothes the panic, but not the root wound. Respect, that takes time, space, absence, and yes, silence. So I stayed silent, not to punish him, to protect me, because I finally understood the woman who keeps talking to a man who's stopped listening is giving CPR to a dead connection. But here's what they don't tell you about going silent. At first, he won't care. He'll enjoy the space. Maybe even feel relieved. He'll scroll Instagram, enjoy his freedom, talk to his friends like nothing changed. He'll assume you'll come back because you always did. But then time does something magical. It amplifies your absence. It rewires his perception. And suddenly, he starts to feel the shift. Not because you posted a thirst trap or tried to make him jealous, but because your silence stopped feeding his ego. And without that supply, he's left with himself, with his choices, with the realization that maybe, just maybe, you were the one thing he thought he could always come back to. And now you're not there. That's when the pain begins. That's when he scrolls through old messages. That's when your voice plays in his mind at 3 a.m. That's when he wonders, did I go too far this time? And whether or not he says it out loud, he feels it. He's lost something he didn't realize was irreplaceable until it was gone. But here's the twist. By the time he feels that pain, you'll be different. You won't be the woman waiting by the phone. You'll be the woman who woke up to her worth in the silence. You'll have taken the energy you were pouring into him and poured it into yourself. You'll have redefined what a high-value man even means. Because let's talk about that for a second. We've been sold a lie. That high value means tall, rich, charming, successful. No. In 2025, a high-value man is one who's emotionally available, who communicates, who takes responsibility, who isn't intimidated by your strength or your standards. He's not just about status, he's about substance. And you only attract that kind of man when you stop entertaining boys who get silent instead of honest, who ghost instead of grow, who breadcrumb instead of build. So yes, going silent is hard, but staying silent, that's where your power begins. Historical interlude. The empress who walked away. Let me tell you a story, not from my life, but from history. Empress Theodora of Byzantium was born into poverty. She was a circus performer, a stage actress, considered unworthy of royal blood. But she met Justinian, a man destined to become emperor. He was captivated by her wit, her brilliance, her conviction. And for a time, they ruled together. She advised him. She stood by his side in war, in politics, in chaos. But when he began to falter, not in power, but in integrity. When he began making choices that endangered the people, betrayed their ideals, Theodora didn't beg. She didn't plead. She retreated into silence. Withdrawn, distant, poised, she made her absence felt, and the empire noticed. Her silence became louder than his decrees. And that silence changed the course of leadership. She wasn't dismissed. She was revered. Because silence, in the hands of a powerful woman, is not weakness. It's a statement. And that's what I want for you. Not just to be heard, but to be felt. Not just to be chosen, but to choose yourself first. What happens after silence? Transformation, clarity, power. You start asking better questions. Not, why didn't he love me the way I loved him? But, why did I think I had to prove my worth to be loved at all? Not, what could I have done differently? But, why was I the only one doing everything? Silence clears the noise so the truth can rise. And the truth is, the woman who reclaims her voice by choosing silence is the woman every man regrets losing. Because she didn't beg for attention. She built herself so powerfully that her absence became unforgettable. And once you understand that, you'll never chase again. Let's redefine love. Love is not sacrifice without boundaries. Love is not losing yourself to hold someone else together. Love is not earned by proving, fixing, or waiting. Love is mutual, safe, deep, brave. And the only way to invite that kind of love in is to walk away from anything less. Yes, even if it hurts. Yes, even if you miss him. Yes, even if you're scared, you'll never find it again. Because staying with the wrong man blocks the right one from ever finding you and going silent. That's not the end of the story. It's the beginning of you. There's a peculiar transformation that takes place when a woman goes silent, not just quiet, but internally resolved. You see, men don't fear losing the woman who's still available in her energy, who's still emotionally accessible even when she says she's done, but the woman who goes silent from within. That's a different kind of haunting. And that haunting doesn't start with the silence itself. It starts with the glow that follows, not the fake, filtered glow you post on social media. I mean the quiet glow, the sacred shift, the lightness in your soul when you finally stop negotiating with your worth. It begins when you wake up one day and realize that not reaching out didn't kill you. It empowered you. That moment when you sit in the discomfort and instead of running from it, you listen. And you start to hear something miraculous, your own voice. The one that had been drowned in his excuses, in your justifications, in the chaos of a connection that was only kept alive by your effort. This voice is raw, unfiltered, and painfully honest. It says, you were never the problem. You were just asking for consistency in a world that romanticizes confusion. So you go silent, not as a tactic, but as a turning point. You begin to make peace with your aloneness. And in that space, your glow begins to rise. Not because you want to make him regret, but because you're remembering who the hell you are. There's a moment in every woman's journey where she realizes that the silence she once feared is actually the sanctuary she needed. And in that sanctuary, she heals. You begin doing things you'd postponed for months. Not because he stopped you, but because you stopped choosing you. You open the book you never finished. You take the solo trip you always fantasized about. You fill your calendar with people who pour into you instead of the one who drained you. You walk past the mirror, and for the first time in a long time, you don't look for what's missing. You see what's always been there, a woman of substance, depth, and unstoppable beauty. And here's the wild part. That's exactly when he starts to feel it. Let's talk psychology. There's a concept called intermittent reinforcement. It's when you get rewarded unpredictably, not consistently. It's the same psychology used in casinos and slot machines. And unfortunately, it's the most addictive kind of reward system. This is exactly what many women experience in inconsistent relationships. He texts a little, disappears a while, love bombs briefly, then retreats. And you become emotionally addicted, not to him, but to the hope that the next interaction will be different. You wait, you crave, you replay, until one day you go silent. And when that reinforcement ends, when you stop rewarding him with your presence, your attention, your emotional labor, his mind goes into panic mode. Wait, what happened? Where did she go? Wasn't she always just there? That's when his brain starts chasing. But here's what separates powerful women from reactive ones. You don't break the silence just because he notices your absence. You stay in your glow. You stay grounded. Because now you understand the game you were unknowingly playing. And you refuse to play it anymore. You don't need unpredictable crumbs when you're building a whole feast for yourself. Story time. The artist who disappeared. Let me tell you about Camille Claudel. She was a brilliant sculptor in 19th century France. Wildly talented, fiercely passionate, and romantically involved with the legendary Auguste Rodin, a man who was both her muse and her downfall. Camille gave him everything: her art, her loyalty, her body, her inspiration. But he only gave her pieces: admiration in private, silence in public, devotion in fragments. When she realized she was being used, both emotionally and artistically, she did something radical for her time. She disappeared. She went silent. Not in bitterness, in brilliance. She built her own studio. She created works that rivaled Rodin's. She poured her heartbreak into masterpieces that screamed louder than any letter she could have written him. And you know what? Rodin felt it. His greatest fear wasn't losing her body. It was losing the light she brought into his world. And once she was gone, he chased shadows. He tried to recreate what she gave so freely before, but he never found it again. That is the power of a woman who goes silent, not to vanish, but to create in solitude. So let's get real. When he finally reaches out, and he will, what should you do? First, breathe, because that message will trigger old reflexes. You'll want to respond quickly. You'll want to believe this is it, that the silence worked, that he's ready. But pause. because there's a difference between missing you and being ready to meet you. A man can miss your warmth and still not offer you the security you need. He can miss the way you made him feel and still not be capable of showing up for you consistently. So before you answer, ask yourself, is he reaching out because he's changed, or because your silence made him uncomfortable? Because attention is not the same as intention. Let that sink in. What do you do in the silence? You become dangerous, not reckless, powerful. You journal the pain, not to wallow, but to understand. You reflect on your patterns, not to blame, but to grow. You define with ruthless clarity your non-negotiables. Does he need to be perfect? No, but he needs to show up consistently, kindly, bravely. You stop asking, does he like me? And start asking, do I like who I am around him? Because the truth is, your silence will scare the wrong man and inspire the right one. The wrong man will panic, gate, guilt, trip. The right man will reflect, recalibrate, return with clarity. Or better yet, he'll already be there. Because high-value men don't disappear. They don't punish you with silence. They communicate. They honor your emotional investment. They match your energy, not drain it. Modern dating in 2025 isn't about rules. It's about awareness. It's about choosing you first, so you attract someone who's also chosen themselves. Someone whole. We've moved past the era of pretending to be chill, just to seem likable. We've evolved beyond dimming our brilliance to avoid intimidating a man. We're done proving we're low maintenance just to be seen as desirable. In 2025, being high value is no longer about how little you demand. It's about how deeply you honor your needs. And silence. Silence is no longer a space of loneliness. It's a space of discernment. A time where you don't just grieve, you rise. Where you don't just hurt, you heal. Where you stop negotiating with boys who can't meet you at your level and start magnetizing men who see your silence as strength, not a threat. Let's flip the script. Instead of fearing that he won't come back, ask, what kind of woman will I become if I don't go back to him? Who will I become when I stop asking for closure and start creating it within? What kind of energy will I exude when I no longer seek validation from the emotionally unavailable? You'll become magnetic, radiant, unshakable, and not because you're heart bitter or closed off, but because you finally realized you don't have to lose your softness to protect your heart. You just have to stop offering it to those who haven't earned it. Closing this part with a powerful truth. A woman's silence is sacred. It is not absence, it is presence with herself. And when a man realizes that the woman he took for granted has found peace in his absence, it does something irreversible. He doesn't just fear losing her, he realizes he already did. So stay silent, not to manipulate, not to punish, but because you are now tuned into a deeper wisdom, one that says, if my voice was too soft for him to hear, let my silence be loud enough for him to feel. And in that silence, you don't just let him feel the pain of losing you. You finally feel the power of choosing you. Here's the truth you've been avoiding. If your absence doesn't matter to him, your presence never did. And that's the kind of truth silence reveals. When you stop chasing, stop over-explaining, stop begging someone to value what they clearly don't understand, you step into a kind of power that doesn't roar, it whispers, I am enough. It doesn't mean you didn't love him. It doesn't mean he never meant anything. It just means you mean more. And for the first time, you finally stop asking, what do I need to do to make him stay? And start asking, why was I so afraid to let go? That question breaks the spell. Because the truth is, you were never holding on to him. You were holding on to the hope of who he could be. But hopes don't build relationships. Actions do. Patterns do. Presence does. And if he disappears every time things get real, that's not love. That's avoidance wrapped in chemistry. The real glow up isn't looking hotter or getting more attention. It's when your nervous system stops responding to inconsistency like it's love. When his silence doesn't trigger your anxiety, it just confirms your decision. That's when you know you've healed. So what happens next? Maybe he texts. Maybe he calls. Maybe he finally says all the things you used to dream of hearing. But instead of your heart racing, your soul exhales. Because now you see it clearly. He didn't change. You did. He's still inconsistent, still vague, still charming and empty. But now you're no longer starving. You're full of truth, of clarity, of self-worth. You don't respond out of fear. You don't entertain it out of loneliness. You simply smile and stay silent, not because you hate him, but because you finally love you. And here's where everything shifts. When you go silent, not as a tactic, but as a reflection of your healed heart, the world responds differently. Suddenly, your standards aren't just words, they're boundaries. Your energy isn't scattered, it's selective. And the kind of man who's meant for you, he'll feel that. He won't need you to beg for effort, for presence, for clarity. He'll bring it because your silence taught you something most women never learn. You don't need to scream to be heard. You just need to stop giving access to people who stopped listening long ago. So here's how it ends. You don't send a long message. You don't ask for closure. You don't wait for him to get it. You get you. You build. You rise. You live. And one day, maybe months from now, he'll see you, glowing, laughing, alive, and realize he lost the kind of woman silence doesn't forget. And you'll realize he was just the lesson. You were always the love.